All right, guys, let's unpack Triller a little bit. And let's start at the beginning. It's so obvious in anything in life to look at it once it's done and to then attempt to place judgments after the fact when everything's clear. But let's take a look at Triller and let's try to be very fair. So they got some terrible news today that they did 150,000 reported buys. I must tell you, that is a wild success. 150,000 in the pay-per-view space right now, which largely doesn't even exist. The pay-per-view that Evander Holyfield or Mike Tyson or even Oscar De La Hoya, some of these guys that fought on pay-per-view and that was the pinnacle of entertainment. The pay-per-view that they knew and existed in versus what you're seeing today, it's not the same business. And I will tell you, if you can do 150,000 buys, you could get any carrier in the world will take you on. Time Warner right now, DirecTV right now, if you can guarantee 150,000 buys, you would be a huge success in the world of pay-per-view. And I only say that in the defense of Triller, that 150,000 is terrible news because they were planning and they functioned their budget around 1 million buys. So they got a tenth. That hurts. But the other side of the coin, 150,000, there is no promoter out there that wouldn't trade places with Triller right now. Sit down and ask, how'd you do it? How'd you market this? How did you do it? Triller doesn't get to take their victory lap because, again, they went off of numbers of, say, Mike Tyson and Roy Jones. Remember that night? And it did like 1.7. It was just this insane level of success. So you try to repeat the same thing, expecting to get the same result. Everybody in business would do that. Everybody would thrive to do that. That's what the key of business is, to find something that makes a profit that you can then duplicate and do again. So I can't give Triller a hard time. I can't. They had reasons to believe what they believed. They took the step, they carried out, they got a great number of 150. 150 is only not a great number because they thought it was going to be 10 times higher and the budget gets off. But now you start to see why the argument of pay fighters all the damn money, you start to see why it doesn't have sustainable legs to it. Everything has to be controlled. Everything. So that you can get to work tomorrow. So that you have a job to go to the next day. I can't tease Triller on 150. I promote Submission Underground. I would trade places with them right now to have that number. Now let's just take a little bit closer look at the fight. A lot of people were given a very hard time about Evander Holyfield being licensed. And even Vitor, who went out there to do his job, having no idea that he's out there with a shell of Evander Holyfield, thinks he's got this multiple-time champion of the world, who, by the way, looked great. I mean, Evander did look great. Picture's worth 1,000 words. He takes his shirt off. You go, my goodness, this guy came to fight. So then Vitor gets given a hard time for going hard against Evander. Other people get questions for allowing Evander to go in there. I think that's all fair, and I think that's a real talking point. I would just encourage you to take a little bit of a closer look, because don't forget, if there's 10 fights on a card, 20 athletes in total, you are licensing for sure 10 losers. For sure, when that card goes off, you issued a license, 50% of the card that's going to fail. What's the relevance to that? The relevance to that is that can't be a litmus test for a license. What the result is going to be cannot be part of what you look at for a license. So what is? Well, the golden rule: protect yourself at all times. I went back and watched that fight, and I saw where 58-year-old Evander Holyfield just wasn't what the resume would say. Right? You felt the resume and you write the records in and how many main events and world title fights. I understand. This is now something different. I got that. Did Evander Holyfield follow the golden rule? Was he able to protect himself at all times? And if you go back and watch that fight, yes. Yes, he was. Even when that fight was stopped, even when he covered on his feet, those were big shots coming by Vitor. Vitor was digging to the body. He was going kidney, liver. He was coming back upstairs. Vitor was very well trained, and you could see some very real boxing skills by Vitor. There's no reason to put Vitor down. He did what he was supposed to do. But as you do look at it a little bit closer, if you want to try to tease Evander Holyfield, go right ahead. You can't say that he didn't protect himself at all times. Yes, he did. He really did, and that's a little harder to see. You have to go back and watch it, and you have to rewatch it again. There was a slip in there that helped to show you some of the athleticism that currently is Evander, right? Where he gets a little off balance so bad that he falls down, falls out of the ring, falls through the ropes. It's embarrassing. It's not good. I saw it too. That isn't grounds to not be licensed. That isn't grounds to not be able to go and do what you voluntarily choose to do, particularly when it's for a living. And the only one who can stop you is a government agency. That's a big deal, man. If anyone stops you from earning a living, it's a big deal, particularly when it's Big Brother known as the government and they are in a decision-making role. So what is it that you want to look for? It's not outcome. I know if I give 2 licenses for one fight, I just licensed a loser. But that's not part of the litmus test. So what is? Protect yourself at all times. Was Evander able to do that? I maintain for you he was. I maintain for you, if you go and watch Vitor, Vitor showed some major skills, and we all know Vitor has some power. We all know Vitor has some speed. Only question here is, can Vitor apply that to the straight-up Queensberry rules when he doesn't have his kicks and his takedowns and when he doesn't have the mixed martial arts rules? The answer was yes. And once you understand how hard and fast and viciously Vitor was striking this man, who stayed on his feet, who covered, then you have another licensed personnel known as the referee who saw early, this isn't going to get any better. It might get worse, but it sure isn't going to get any better. We're all done here. I got to look at the players involved and say good job by all of them. I got no complaint there at all. And I think as we look back on Triller, we have a little bit more of a positive eye, because so many people were cheering against them. And the fact that they took such a shot here, right? 150, which would be a wild success by anybody else's standards. Their standard had gotten so big that it's a bad number. I'm not giving them a hard time about that. Got 150,000 people. And it wasn't easy to buy, by the way. I mean, you got to go to a desktop, then you got to get this code, and it comes through your smart TV. I mean, you've got to want to watch it. And they still got 150,000 people. That's a very beautiful number. Are they going to be able to come back? Do they have pockets deep enough? I mean, you start to see the risk involved. Nobody knows what it's going to take to have a massive fight. The smart promoters will know certain ingredients that generally will take you to a beautiful night. But you're starting to see it's a gamble and it's hard. It's a very hard business. And to point your finger in somebody's chest who tried in the first place, let alone succeeded. Instead of pointing your finger in their chest, maybe you put your hand on their back and you tell them good job. It's a hard business. I will tell you, one of my favorite promoters out there right now is a guy named Dave Feldman. Feldman is doing bare knuckle boxing. And his level of production is second to none. It is just a beautiful, beautiful show. And what his numbers are or where that's going to go, I don't know. But I know he does his job, which is to keep the lights on, to keep business moving forward, to keep educating, to keep promoting, to keep bringing fans in, to try to sign bigger and better names. He's doing all he can do, and it can't be easy. It can't. There's major risks there. There is no days off. 7 days in a week, the only thing you're upset about is there's only 24 hours in a day because it's not enough. And Feldman is pushing through, and he never complains. I just respect that. My buddy Wes just fought for Feldman over the weekend. Bare knuckle boxing. And Wes is 48 years old. He's broken down in terms of his hip. He's got a really bad hip. He can't go out there and do road work. He can't run. There's just certain things physically he can't do. Now, Wes won't hear any of those things. He's too stubborn. He's in the gym every day, twice a day, and decides he's going to take a bare knuckle fight against Houston Alexander. You guys remember Houston Alexander. Came through the Ultimate Fighter, fought Kimbo Slice. He's going to go fight Houston in Houston's hometown under bare knuckle rules, which, by the way, is very difficult. It's very difficult because you cannot practice bare knuckle boxing, at least not the same way as you can practice MMA. You could practice wrestling, you could practice jiu-jitsu, you could practice taekwondo, any form of combat. You can go in the room and you can simulate it. You cannot simulate in a practice room the rules of bare knuckle boxing. You are not going to toe the line without gloves on and see who can get to the target first. You're just not going to do that. No coach would allow you to do that. So there's a lot of guessing. There's a lot of visual work. There's a lot of trying to prepare while understanding you don't quite have the experience of being prepared. So Wes goes out and does this. At 48 years old, the man, UFC veteran, is a bare knuckle veteran. This was his second time in there. He's a military veteran. served with the Marines. He's done everything that you need to do, but he himself has decided one more. Okay. So we're going to go do one more. Now, Wes ends up second. He loses to Houston Alexander. I see Wes today, and he's all upset with himself. I'm going, Wes, you got to be kidding me. The man in the mirror, you should be extremely proud of. This is a hard worker who took a risk, who went into a sport that he knew very little about, except for the fact that he knows I cannot train this and spar this like other sports. Oh, by the way, I'm going to walk in front of the world. I'm taking on Houston Alexander, who went 15 minutes with Kimbo Slice. Wes is going to be down on himself about what? About what? The outcome? Come on, man. Only had a 50% chance of winning that from the beginning. Who cares about the outcome? Did you make that walk? Did you prepare? Did you put yourself in a position to be successful? Yes. Wes did all of those things. I'm proud of Wes. Wes is down on himself. I'm not down on him. I look at him differently now. I look at him better now. It's a brave man who took a risk that he didn't need to take. He's no longer like me. He's no longer undefeated.